just wrapped an awesome conversation with Jonathan B. Smith. You guys are really going to enjoy this one. We talked a lot about skills, tactics for negotiations, and everything in life is a negotiation, whether you're trying to get your kids to bed or trying to solve the Iran conundrum. Everything's a negotiation. These are skills that will help you out in your life. So I hope you pay attention, take some notes, and enjoy this episode with Jonathan B. Smith. Before we get started, though, I want to drop a couple things. We will be releasing new episodes every Friday. Decided to start a little bit more informal today in my backyard, but hope you guys really like it. Be sure to subscribe while you're here on YouTube or wherever you're at, audio, whatever. Be sure to check out the NDS show. My name is Nick. I hope you enjoy. Jonathan, appreciate you joining me today. I'm really excited to talk to you. Author of Fight Less, Win More, expert business strategist. What's going on, man? What's new with you? What's happening in the negotiation world?
Well, we've already sold 10,000 copies of the book. So this Fight Less, Win More book in the first quarter sold 10,000 copies, which is absolutely incredible.
Awesome.
So got the flywheel going there. Just got back from San Francisco with YPO Global Marketing Summit. I had 180 people there that I was talking to about negotiations. Came back on the red eye this morning, so I had to get here in time to meet with you.
Awesome. Well, talking with all these people, what's like the number one thing that they ask you? What's the top question?
Oh, well, everyone, what they want to know is, how do I become a better negotiator? Like, how do I actually field these skills?
Mm-hmm.
And what I like to say is these negotiation skills are like speaking another language. So the best way to do it is via immersion. So you literally have to be willing to do low stakes practice every day. And that low stakes practice, the way I did it is I used the journal for 6 months and journaled every single day about what skills I went out and tried. And I found that was the best way to learn.
What's like a low stakes negotiation? Did you like go to the Starbucks and ask for a discount? Like what? Like, give me an example.
If you go to a hotel, we go to a hotel and ask for an upgrade. So like if you don't get an upgrade, what's the difference? Like, but we go there, try to get an upgrade. You might get an extra shot of espresso at Starbucks, something like that.
Well, let's do it. How do we get an upgrade, man? How do we get an upgrade at the hotel?
Yeah, well, we start with, we do something called an accusations audit. So an accusations audit is we're going to say something to them. So last time I was at Pentagon City at the Ritz-Carlton, and there's a big line. Everyone's waiting to get in. And I just want my room. I don't care what room I get. Well, it's not exactly an upgrade. It's just like, I don't want to wait until 4 o'clock to get a room. So I walked in and I looked at the person and I said, "It looks like you're arm wrestling with that computer over there." And they looked at me and they smiled because I was actually acknowledging what was going on in their life. They're having some struggle with the computer. And I said, "How hard would it be for you to get me a room early?" And they're like, "Well, if you're willing to take the handicap room, I can get you in there right now." I'm like, I'm not difficult at all. I'd be thrilled to have the handicap room so I could go upstairs and take a shower, get ready for the meeting, and ended up getting, all my other friends had to wait 3 hours for a room, and I got in the room when I walked in because I made the person feel heard. I made it easy for them to say no, which was actually a yes, and I was easy.
Did you ever read Tom Sawyer when you were a kid?
Yeah, I don't really remember, but yeah.
Well, Tom Sawyer is very crafty. Okay, he's a very crafty character. He's always kind of getting people to do work for him and kind of negotiate his way through life in these various low stakes setting, but they take you on a journey in those books. That's kind of what it makes me think about. It makes me think about like there's certain people that they have these skills and it's almost like a different life. Because you're negotiating everything. Is that right? Like everything is a negotiation. When you go to the store and you buy something, when you are entering a business agreement, when you're, debating on if you want to sanction this country versus that country and how they want to respond. I mean, everything from the bottom up is a negotiation.
We say negotiations are everywhere. Anytime I want or I need is in your head or your counterpart's head, you're in a negotiation. And I make it it's basically sport for me at this point. It actually is just makes it easier to go through life. I like your Tom Sawyer analogy. And so everything, one of my friends says that I always order off menu. Like they say, I'm sorry, we don't have ice cream. And somehow I managed to get them to make me custom ice cream because why, I had 30 people coming to an event and I really wanted ice cream. We ended up getting the chef to make homemade ice cream. He asked us what flavors we wanted. And then he presented the ice cream and it was like the best part of the whole meal, having the chef come out and present the ice cream, order off menu.
So if I want to float through life like Tom Sawyer, what do I need to know? Where do I begin? And here's another kind of interesting question. How do you even know when you're negotiating? Like, how do you know?
Well, like,
That might sound like a silly question, but a lot of people don't even know when they're in a negotiation, me included in certain instances, where things are assumed, assumptions are made. There's a world of paperwork or whatever. Sometimes it's like, wait a second, I can push back here. I can get my way here. How do you even know when you're in that setting?
well, so my mantra is to stay curious. So if you're curious in life, you're more likely to figure out that you're in a negotiation. And my goal is to hunt for what we call black swans, pieces of information I walked into the meeting with that I didn't even know. The other party didn't even know they were going to give me. But if you're in a negotiation or you're trying to get information on whatever transaction you're trying to do, even if you're trying to get your kids to go to sleep or trying to get them to stop, begging you for something or what have you. But the idea is if you stay curious and you start understanding, we say you walk to the other side of the street. Like, look at their perspective. What's going on in their life? See the world from their side. So it's that you need to stay curious, and then you need to go. We say hunt for black swans. Just go look for what's the hidden information that they didn't intend to share with you in this meeting. But if they did, it would improve your position in the negotiation that you're having. Mindset first.
That's a great segue because one of the questions I really wanted to ask you was how do you negotiate when you have no leverage? When you're going into something, you have a certain outcome, you have an expectation. There's something you want, right? You mentioned I want. But your leverage is basically nil. How do you go about this? Like how do you view that situation?
Well, people are 6 times more likely to want to do a deal with you if they like you. So first and foremost, it's that they like you, that you can get someone to like you. Second is you can't show up and just say, I want this. You have to show up and use what we call tactical empathy. So that tactical empathy is the idea of the person at the Ritz-Carlton arm wrestling the computer. Like all of a sudden they're like, no one else has showed up today who was actually interested even slightly in what's going on in my life. All they want is their entitled room. So I differentiate myself at that point. And tactical empathy is you have an intuition and then you verbalize that intuition to that other party. Like they feel heard. Like as soon as people start feeling heard, they will then be open to rapport with you, to go like, oh yeah, I can understand you. You just got off a plane and you really like to take a shower before your event at 6:00 or whatever. They can kind of see it in your face. They at that point, they are reciprocal in terms of with you. You get reciprocal empathy. Then you have trust-based influence. You have to achieve trust-based influence in order to actually make the deal. What we say is people often explain too early. Like if you show up and you're an analyst and you start telling people like, I can do this, this, and this for you, and you need me, and this is why, and you're going to have to give me a better price, or I can't provide those resources at that time frame, you're going to lose because you got no leverage. But if you walk in and they feel heard and they like you, you achieve trust-based influence, you're much more likely to get a better deal than what you walked in with. So we say, don't be so sure about what you want that you wouldn't take a better deal if offered.
I like that. You wouldn't take a better deal if offered, especially if you have no leverage going into it. You meant the first thing you mentioned was they have to like you, right?
It certainly
Y-
helps. They're six
Let
times more likely to want to do a deal with you at that point.
6 times more likely. Um, my spider sense goes up though when I'm talking to someone and I know that they're reaching, right? They're really trying to be liked in order to negotiate something. How do you prevent that? How do you prevent the recipient from being like, "Yeah, I get what you're doing." Like it's a game, like you mentioned. And if you're playing the game with smart people that understand that it's a game, they're going to deploy these tactics. And how do you prevent from the counter in the intelligence world? We would call this counterintelligence, right? We know that you're spying on us and we're going to do these things to prevent you from spying on us. We know that you're deploying you're trying to be liked in order to negotiate a better scenario for you or your organization.
Well, we like to say that humans can smell intent. So we all know that creepy sales guy who's like, you're like, the BS meter goes off and you're like, there's no way that guy's just totally full of it. I don't want to do a deal with him. So we're not looking to, that doesn't work. What does work is having the other party feel heard. It's really hard to explain, but if something's going on for someone and they feel heard, because people are desperate to feel heard. And once they feel heard, they start talking. And so the skills that we have, and this is why I say you have to do low stakes practice, because when you're in the room with whoever you're dealing with in procurement or whatever you're dealing with, they do this all day long. But if you were to say to them, wow, you probably got, requests stacked up, 25 high. It's September. And you probably haven't been home for dinner in the last, you know, 30 days. I mean, all of a sudden, you're the first person that said that to them. You haven't been home for dinner in 30 days because you're stuck trying to close out the fiscal year. You start having a better chance at that point to build rapport and to actually have trust-based influence.
There is something about empathy that strikes a nerve with people, for sure. Like actual empathy, though. You know, I mentioned how you can kind of sense, like you mentioned sensing intent, but even still, even when you have that sense, if somebody says something that is truly empathetic, it almost doesn't matter, does it? It's almost
No,
like this person kind of gets me a little bit. It's almost as if the guard goes down. That's it. A little bit of empathy.
it's like, yeah. So I would say, when you said that, I would say that's right, and that's empathy, because like you're getting it. Like the guard goes down a little bit because all of a sudden, like, no one understands them. You know, their spouse doesn't understand them, their kids don't understand them, their boss doesn't understand them, their customer doesn't understand them. All they're doing is like running around trying to make people happy, and the car's not big enough, or the vacation's not good enough, or the food isn't good enough. And it's like you're showing up and going, God, I could see how that would be challenging for you without them even telling you what's going on. It's literally where you're like, you have an intuition, the urge to correct is irresistible. So if in fact you get it wrong, they'll just tell you, no, that's not what's going on with me. You know, my dad is sick or whatever. And then you're like, oh, that's a black swan. They're human.
I really like that term, black swan. I'm gonna steal that. I'm gonna start using that
You should.
in my company. And maybe like you guys
You
are
should.
hunting black swan hunters, uh, looking for swans from our potential clients, etc. A lot of times we negotiate, and I think a lot of people can empathize with this. We negotiate with organizations. So it's not just a negotiation person to person, it's organization to organization, this group of people or negotiating with this group of people. How does that change the dynamic there? Is the goal still the same? Are you trying to empathize from a group level, or are you trying to connect one-on-one to the main person, the key person? How does the group dynamic change that? And I can give you an example if it helps.
Examples are always helpful.
Yeah. So like, for example, my company, we do a lot of bids, right? So we're bidding on government contracts, some of them very, very large and sometimes not. But especially for the larger procurements, we're working with these massive defense contractors with multi-billion-dollar budgets, et cetera, et cetera. So they'll have a whole team, let's say 6, 7, 8 people that are focused on this one effort. And for us, it could be, vitally important that we get on that effort. And sometimes the roles are reversed, where maybe they can bid on it and we can't, or maybe we can bid on it but they can't. So any GovCon person, or really probably any business person, can probably relate with this for big deals. How does that dynamic change, where maybe there's a point person from each side, but for sure you have to convince and negotiate with at least 4 to 5 people. Obviously there's always the people that are influencers and the people that are the real decision makers, and then there's people that are just there to take notes or something. But how does that group dynamic change a negotiation?
So it starts with the fact that vision drives decision. So that team over there has a vision for what, let's say you're going to be a subcontractor to a prime. They have a vision for what the prime is going to provide and how that experience is going to feel. And if you can get them to share that vision, what would a successful subcontract agreement look like 3 years from now? What would a subcontract relationship look 3 years from now? If you can get them to start describing that to you, I want an account manager on my team that looks like this. I want a team that's, ready to go anywhere in the world in 24 hours or whatever. Like, how do we get, a lot of times with people, if we're saying if you're in a job and you want to get a promotion, which is similar, we'd say, how does one get on the best projects in this company? That's what you want. How do I what would it take to be the subcontractor of the year with Boeing or whoever you're dealing with? But if you can get to them to tell you their vision, and you're trying to get the primary to do it, like whoever your primary point of contact is, because vision is going to drive decision. And then the other thing that's really interesting is we say there's always a team of deal killers on the other side. And especially given what you're doing, I'd say to the primary on their side, there's always a team of deal killers on the other side. What are you going to say when they say they want to go with subcontractor B instead of us? So you're actually letting them role play how they're going to support you inside their own negotiation to decide who wins as the sub in that case. And that's weird. That's weird to ask it. It's not something you would naturally think about, but it's something that once they tell you that, they're much more likely to actually support you in that way.
So play that out with me a little bit. So let's say I'm talking to, I don't know, one of these giant defense contractors, multi-billion-dollar contract. We want to get on there. We got a team. We have some good stuff to offer. It's not that we have no leverage. It's that we have, in the context of a massive multi-billion-dollar deal, you have less leverage than, say, a giant company. Walk me through that a little bit. Like, I'll have my team with the point person, and they'll have their team with the point person. What is our approach? What do I tell my team first? And then how do we think through this step by step? And then the other part of this is that negotiations are great in a room, sure, virtually a little bit harder, and then more so the fact that they don't happen in a day. It's like over a course of could be a week, a month, a year sometimes. Um, this is a massive process, and it's unless you stop to think about it, you probably wouldn't even think about it. To be real, you just wouldn't. You just say, "Oh, this is my work," right? You would just do your work.
Yeah, and
How do
submit
we
to,
think through this?
and just drop the RFP response without actually doing the negotiation, and then you're one of 10 people who dropped a response and spent all that time on it. So, yeah, I think the point about it taking a long time, people are usually pretty impatient about the negotiation. And the reality is these negotiations you're in, if it took a week, I'd be surprised. It's more like months, years to build the relationships that you need. And I'll give you some examples. So given the time we have, I want to try to make it discreet. We can have a separate conversation about, I have a whole deal prep process that I created where we can actually figure out what it's actually, you could do like a targeting exercise with what's that person's worldview and how would we negotiate it with that person specifically. But in this case, you want to first and foremost get super clear what they're looking for. I mean, they say what they're looking for in the RFP request, but you really want to hear from them. So it seems like there's some criteria that are really important to you in this process. If you could get them to say, yeah, I know it says we need these 10 things, but these three are these are going to really be make it or break it on this deal. So can we get them to tell us what that looks like? I always like the thing. There's always a team of deal killers on the other side. What would you say to them? Sounds like you want to pick us, but there's always a team of deal killers on the other side. What are you going to say to them when they push back? And then the other thing I like to say is we like to understand implementation. So seems like you have an internal process for how this is going to work, and you have a timeline, and you know, would you be opposed to sharing with me how the process is going to work to select your subcontractor in this case? Like, if you do those three things, you start pulling out black swans.
And that's what gives you leverage, right?
Then
The
you
black
have leverage. Yeah, well, you can at least respond to the black swans and say, "Oh, okay, they want this type of asset, or we need to, you know, give give them this kind of um, prior, what is it called, prior experience, or these kind. If we're going to provide the CVs for the RFP, let's make sure we provide the CVs, with a Naval Academy grad instead of an Air Force grad, because he's a Naval Academy grad and he said he'd prefer to work with a Navy guy. I don't know, things like that.
that absolutely does work. I'm going to vouch for that right now. I can confirm what you just said will work. It's worked for us in the past of just understanding the person making the decision and then presenting a solution that's aligned with their background, right? And that's back to empathy and kind of understanding where everything is at.
They feel heard at that point. You're like, oh, he heard me when I said I went to the Naval Academy. He heard me when I said I grew up in Oklahoma. He heard me when I said I had this MOS. He heard me when I said,
Right.
whatever those preferences would be.
So if you're taking a newbie off the street, okay, somebody that has no skills whatsoever, what do you teach them on? You said you started with the low stakes negotiation. Then how do you ramp that up to how do you turn it up to 11?
Well, so I have a proven process I created because everyone asks this question. So my proven process is there's reading. So you can read Never Split the Difference. You can read Fight Less, Win More. Both very good resources for this. We have Masterclass that's available. So like just basic, it's almost like that's the library. There's online training. You have to journal. Like, I know people don't want to journal. I'm like, just journal one thing every single day that you did. If you want to change a habit, it's going to take 65 days to change a habit. So now I want you to start journaling. And I say, okay, so the type A people want to journal 7 times in one day and then not journal for another week. I'm like, that's not how it works. One time every day. And the journal entry, and the book actually has journal entries in it. I call it a logbook because I'm a pilot. But what was the date? Who were you negotiating with? What was the scenario? What skill did you use? What was the outcome? How would you do it differently? So we do that. Then I like to have swim buddy. So like if you and I were learning the skills together, we would pretty much talk 2 or 3 times a week and talk about like, hey, what's going on? How'd you do this week on your negotiations? I also would structure I don't know if you guys use Microsoft Teams or Slack or,
Unfortunately, yes, we use
yeah.
Team.
Yeah. So I would have a Teams channel. Some my clients who are doing this have a Teams channel where they can share like, hey, I just used this skill and it worked really well. Hey, I'm up against a difficult client. How would you handle this? And then what I would do, and I have a team at Gartner doing this now without me, just with the book. Every week they're reading a chapter, they're debriefing the chapter, they're talking about 5 or 6 actual scenarios, and they brief the new chapter and then read another chapter. And that's the best way to learn it for a newbie. This is the adult learning model says you actually have to do. You learn by doing, you don't learn by hearing or
That's
being
right.
taught.
That's exactly right. Yeah, you learn by doing. What about proliferating those skills through an organization? And it sounds like Gardner kind of might have a good idea of how to do this. But let's say I wanted my whole company to have these skills. So when they enter a negotiation, they're on point, and I don't have to be in the room there. Not that I'm like some master negotiator or something, but um, how do you proliferate these skills throughout a whole organization?
Well, first you have to be patient, right? Because it's like any training exercise, and you could make it, Nick, the year of negotiation. And literally, that's why that model I just suggested, that process I suggested, you could you could do it across all different kinds of departments. Finance has it, marketing has it, sales has it,
Mhm.
operations. Everyone has negotiations in their life. And I generally would want to start with one team. I mean, we could do a training across the whole organization, but to get it to really stick, there has to be a team that has success, that's walking around pounding their chest and saying, by the way, who's number one on the board? It's us. We're using those skills. And then everyone starts leaning in and going, oh, maybe I should go start spending some time on those skills. And the reality is if you start doing the skills, you'll start using them at home. You'll have better conversations with your kids. You'll have better conversations with your spouse. You'll have better conversations with your family. And that's how it all starts to work. It becomes like a tsunami. But we have to start the fire somewhere with like some sort of catalyst.
I want to give a gift to a specific group of people. Okay, in my space, in the intelligence community, national security space, whatever you want to call it, the recruiters are hypercritical. I mean, these are some of the most important people in this space, right? The ones that are locating talent and bringing them into like a contract organization or to a government agency, they have a really tough job because you're negotiating with people, of course, to get them to come to your organization, or you're getting them to come to your agency. And there's some common objections and things like that. And I can give you examples here to maybe help out a little bit of the types of negotiations that they're having. They may be typical recruiter things like, hey, I want this amount of money. You guys aren't offering that, or I don't want to live there, even though we know it's a good place to live. This person maybe has a different perception. We have this actual big problem with we have contracts in Fayetteville, North Carolina, near Fort Bragg, right? Actually on Fort Bragg, but people would live in Fayetteville or in the region. That's one of the most common objections. I don't want to move to Fayetteville. And they have this idea of Fayetteville in their head about it, probably from the 70s, Fayetteville, North Carolina,
Okay.
which wasn't the greatest place. Now it's nice. It's, I mean, beautiful downtown area. There's some, but anyways, it's still a stereotype that they have to fight through. So that's one objection. I don't want to move to this area. Other objections might be, even without knowing, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that job, even if they don't know exactly what it is. I don't want to work for that customer. Okay, these are basically common objections that intelligence recruiters get. How would you approach those types of objections, and what are some skills, tools, weapons that we could give these humans to better recruit for their organizations?
Well, so one of the things is, so as you start telling me the objections, we have this skill called an accusations audit. So an accusations audit is, I'm going to say, you probably think Fayetteville is an awful place to live. We're going to literally say that to them. Now, they're either going to say, that's right, or they're going to say to you, no, that's not the issue. I need to wait until the end of the school year for my kids to move. So now you got a black swan. It's very awkward to say you probably think Fayetteville is an awful place to work, but the reality is it's already in their head. If you say it to them, you think of it like noise canceling. It's actually negative emotions canceling, because we've now accelerated the process of having a conversation, because we're not guessing anymore. We're out there telling them what we think they're thinking. So you have an intuition, you're going to just put it out there. You think this is what they're thinking, you put it out there. They're going to say that's right, or the urge to correct is irresistible, and they'll tell you it's not that, right? Or they'll tell you, I worked for that prime before and I had a bad experience. And they'll maybe even tell you what the bad experience is, and we can make sure that, maybe they just had a bad boss. And then the recruiters are good at addressing that, but they need to know what the facts are, as opposed to some generalization that, they don't like that prime. So the key is to get the other party talking and feeling heard. That accusations audit is super powerful. It's counterintuitive that it works, but once you've actually said that, you've canceled that negative emotion, and people are 31% smarter in a positive frame of mind. So if we can put them in a positive frame of mind, their amygdala is not getting in the way, so they can actually make a smarter choice.
So the accusation audit, what are the keys to that? What are the things people need to know? Like, how would you know to say that about Fayetteville, right? Like, you might not even understand that that's a tool in your tool belt.
Well, we look at it this way. Your conscious processes 40 bits of information per second, and your subconscious processes 20 million bits of information per second. If you have an intuition that something's going on, we just label it. We just say it. We just say the accusations audit. We're not afraid to get it wrong. If we get it wrong, they'll just tell us, no, that's not the issue. It's not Fayetteville, it's something else. So, and the recruiters have enough dope, data on previous engagement, that they probably know what the 10 things are that people are going to come up with anyway. So we can already walk into the room and have a pretty good sense of, its location, its MOS, its agency, its, I don't want to work for that kind of person, or I don't want to be in, overseas, or whatever it is. Like, we can address that. They already know what they are. They already know what these are. They're just not used to addressing them by saying, and we don't say we say you probably think. Like, because we're saying, I don't know for sure. I'm not accusing you of anything. So we're just saying, you probably, you might, you may. And by doing that, they all of a sudden feel heard, because they're like, that's right. I'm not moving back to Fayetteville. My ex lives there. Oh, your ex.
Well, that's a viable reason, though. That's a good. That's an objection we just walk away from. No, but so okay, so let's walk through this a little bit. So we have a good candidate. they want to come work, or they're a little hesitant to come work with us, I should say. Let's say Fayetteville, just to go along with this case study here. And but the pay is not quite there. It's like a little bit under what they want. And sometimes it's significantly under what they want, and probably not what the market is actually saying, but that's neither here nor there. Um, what about that objection? The pay is not quite there. I mean, pay is an important thing because obviously that's your livelihood.
Sure. Right. And, so a lot of times we might look for like, what's the non-cash comp options that we can provide them that will get them over the edge. So we always in these negotiation preps try to come up with the non-cash comp options that might bump the pay up. We could also, I don't know if you're talking about someone who's like unreasonable and there's like, they're getting paid 80 and they think they're worth 160 and you're like, there's no way we're going to get there. The pay band doesn't work.
No, not
Versus,
unreasonable people. I mean, those people just aren't, there are certain people that just don't have an understanding of what the market is for this type of stuff. And those, yeah, I mean, you almost can't do anything with that, right?
right.
But
Well,
for the people that are on the edge or aren't quite sure, and maybe they have an expectation. I find this a lot when people come out of the military, especially. They have an expectation of earnings because maybe their buddy got a job at Lockheed Martin making 120 for some like one-off thing. So their expectation is, oh, I have no degree. I'm gonna come out of the military and make this
oh,
120K. And it's like, well, that's not actually what the market says. The market suggests you'll start a little bit lower. You'll get there eventually, but you likely start a little bit lower.
yeah. I mean, I think the key there is like, we say like, we have another skill and because I'm going to just share the skill. It's in the book also, but a summary, like we would literally summarize. So far, you've told me, you're coming out of the military. You expect $120,000. You want to live in Washington, D.C. You're expecting to live in a 4-bedroom apartment house in McLean or whatever. I'm kidding. But,
Not at that salary, you ain't living in McLean.
but what we're going to do is we'll summarize what they're saying. They're going to tell us if we're right or wrong. We're going to say, as a result, here's where we're at. As a result, we're off by $10,000 or something like that in terms of what I can pay you. What have I missed? So we're going to like try to get to the point where like, it's almost like there's an interface between the two. There's a summary and it's an interface so that we can go like, okay, here's where we're at. And then you can make your ask, or then you can say, okay, so we're off by 10,000. Here's how the career progression works at GOL. Here's what you can expect. You can expect to get to that 10,000 if you get this training and do these kind of jobs or take this
Sure.
TDY or whatever over the course of the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. So paint a picture so they can see how they get themselves there, as opposed to getting stuck over the $10,000 difference that's unreasonable based on their buddy who probably lied to them at a bar about the 120 they're making at Lockheed Martin.
Definitely lied. Very cool. So I think that negotiations kind of reveal these kind of core human truths about people, about what is at the heart of who we are, right? We talk about empathy a little bit. What do you think it reveals about humans? What are those things that's like, I get why this person does this, or why this negotiation failed? What are those core human truths that we see through this mechanism?
I always say everyone wants to feel heard. Every human being in the world wants to feel heard and understood. So, and generally they want to feel special. If they feel heard, they feel special. So if you can make someone feel heard, you're like, it goes back to you're 6 times more likely to get a deal if people feel, if they like you. But they like you because, like Chris would explain, that we have 5 levels of listening, and the top level of listening is listening for their point of view. What is their worldview? And he would say, I'm negotiating with Al Qaeda. I have to express their worldview to them so they actually understand that I understand what their perspective is. I don't have to agree with it. But the
Right.
person who thinks they're worth another 10,000 because their buddy said they're worth another 10,000, that's where they're coming out. And they're scared coming out of the military. And they've had a very structured life for the last 20 years and they're not sure what's up, which way's up. So like understanding their point of view and their worldview and having them hear that you truly understand them is the basis of this negotiation, tactical empathy.
I think a lot of times too, you kind of see who somebody is. I'm big on integrity. I really like working with people that are high integrity, people that do what they say they're gonna do, that you don't have to supervise much because they're just doing the right thing all the time. And I gravitate towards people with high integrity. Those are the people I seek out even for no reason. Just if it's, hey, I want to work with this person. There might not be a business case for it, but I want to work with this high integrity individual because through this negotiation process, they've shown that they have high integrity, whether it went my way or not. I think integrity is one of those things that really stands out to me, and negotiation is one of those processes where you get kind of see what people are made of, really, especially when
Yeah.
it's not doesn't go your way.
Well, Chris said, I also teach the entrepreneurial operating system. So I'm an expert EOS implementer. And
Real
in
quick, when you're saying Chris, you're talking about
Chris
Chris Voss,
Voss,
right?
sorry
So
about that.
Chris Voss, you can look him up on YouTube or Google or whatever. Uh, Hostage negotiator, famous author, really awesome proliferator of this of this skill set. And you trained under Chris, is that right?
I trained under Chris. Chris used to run the crisis negotiation unit at the FBI in Quantico. So he was the lead international hostage negotiator for the FBI. So that's where these skills come from originally. The
Okay.
crossover to the IC and the commercial world. We basically brought these skills. He brought these skills to the commercial world. But one of the things that he really liked about this entrepreneurial operating system that I run is that we define right people for an organization based on their core values fit to the core values that you have in your organization. So if do the right thing is one of the core values in your organization, and I'm replacing integrity with do the right thing, but if do the right thing is that then we expect the people in the organization to demonstrate that. And Nick, when someone doesn't demonstrate it, like I had someone who just constantly showed up late, and there was always an excuse, like the person that like
Sure.
folds into the room and like, oh,
Yeah.
sorry, I was late. There's traffic again. I'm like, there's traffic for the fifth time. Um, it's a visceral feeling. Like that's the wrong person for your organization. So we're always looking for the right person. And I call that a core values fit.
So you call this what was it called again?
The entrepreneurial operating system.
All right. So the entrepreneurial operating system. So walk me through this a little bit. So most companies have some type of SOP procedure, written down somewhere of how you do every task, etc. How does it fit into that? And what are kind of the key elements of it?
That's a big question. Like I'll
Yeah.
give you like a 2-minute overview. So
We'll take the 2-minute overview. That's fine.
yeah, I put EOS in at the Spy Museum in February of 2020. We saved the Spy Museum by implementing the system. So I am on the advisory board of the Spy Museum as a result. That my negotiation was, if I do a good job, can I be on the advisory board?
So you won.
And we all won. We saved the museum. We raised the $10 million sheltered venue grant and kept the museum open. But it's a strategy execution framework. So the idea is, and it really does three things. It's a simple system. It does three things. We say vision, traction, healthy. Vision, getting everyone aligned where you are taking the business. 5 to 10 years from now? And everyone buying into that. Like, okay, everyone understands this is where we're going. Traction, we say, what do we have to do in the next 90 days to keep everyone accountable, moving forward towards that vision? What are like the 5 things that we need to get done this quarter? And then we say healthy. And to us, healthy is organizational clarity. Like everyone knows what their role is. And because 2 people in the same seat looks like this as soon as something goes wrong. The idea is we have organizational clarity, and then we have all the difficult conversations. Whatever conversations we have to have, we will have those difficult conversations. So in the end, you know where you're going, you know what you need to do this quarter, and you've got a high performance team that can go execute again and win with the best. So that's what the entrepreneurial operating system is. And one of the components inside of the vision is, what are your core values for your business? Like, how do we define them? You know what they are, Nick, but they may not be defined as well as, like, I want every single person in the organization to be able to express them and actually deliver them. And then we can actually measure every single person in the organization against those core values. Like, are they demonstrating them 100% of the time, 50% of the time, or 0%? Like we say, they're a plus, minus, or a minus. And the minuses don't last. The plus minuses need to adjust. And the pluses, those are the people we our go-to folks.
I sense a hockey analogy there. It's a famous statistic from hockey, plus minuses, which I think is a great way of actually looking at team members for an organization, plus minus. I mean, that really is. It's, when you're on the ice, are you adding to the mission, or are you just kind of there, or are you subtracting from the mission? Like anytime we can analogize hockey, I'm in. So if you have more hockey analogies, you let me know. I can
That's
pass
my
you the
hot.
puck.
Okay, now I understand. I got my black swan. I need to take you to a Rangers game when you're in New York.
That's it. That's it. I'm down. We go to the Rangers game, especially if they're playing the Lightning. Then we can really talk. And when I say playing the Lightning, I mean losing to the Lightning. What has that experience been like, training under Chris Voss?
I mean, I just have lots of gratitude for the opportunity to be with Chris. It's interesting. I met Chris in DC before he was famous. Like, he had been at the FBI, but he was like one of your folks who had come out of the FBI and then was trying to figure out what to do in the commercial world. And so he was in between. And funny thing, I had done a lot of work in Abu Dhabi and I had a lot of relationships there. And Chris was having trouble getting paid on a project there. Well, I just knew Chris was some FBI retired guy in DC, like all these other FBI retired guys. I had no idea he was a negotiator. Well, I helped him with the negotiation, understand what was happening on the ground. I knew his counterpart. We ended up getting him paid, and he ended up doing EOS with me. So I actually am let's call it the business architect behind his business. So we've worked together for like the last 12 years, and I was helping him with the business. And at some point I'm like, these skills are amazing. How do I learn these skills? And I'm the only person on the Black Swan team who is not a hostage negotiator. So I'm the entrepreneur on the team who went and learned the skills and didn't go through Quantico or one of the negotiation schools with Police Academy.
And earlier you mentioned negotiating with kids. Any parent does this every day, nonstop, 100% of the time. Kids are always negotiating bedtime, what to eat, what to wear, everything. What's different about negotiating with kids as opposed to Al Qaeda? Or is there a difference, really?
Skills are the same. The skills are the same.
Yeah.
You might be more emotionally invested with your kids. And the other thing,
I think so.
the other thing is, like, using the skills with people who know you really well. They're like, you sound weird. Like, what are you saying? Why do you keep saying it that way?
Sure.
So they'll know that more. Like, it's easier to you can actually teach the kids because they have the ability to bring on language better than an adult. If you use it with the kids, they'll start using it with you. They'll start using labels with you. They'll start using accusations audits. They'll start using summary. And it'll make their life better. You just have to make sure that they don't feel like you're using it to manipulate them. You're just using it to have a conversation. They'll just be a little more sensitive to, why do you sound different?
We use what's called chocolate leverage. It's a skill that is an acquired taste. No, my little one, she really likes chocolate. So if we say, hey, we do try to teach delayed gratification though through this process. We'll say, hey, we'll give you the chocolate tomorrow if you do this thing or cooperate or whatever.
So you rely on bribery through chocolate.
Bribery through chocolate, whatever you want to call it. Hey, it works.
Okay,
Sometimes
perfect.
you just got to do what works. Well, Jonathan, man, I really appreciate you coming and great conversation. What are some other maybe key things you'd like people to know about you and about your work? And of course, we'll give everybody the links in the description, all that stuff, so they can check out your book, check out your courses or whatever. But what are some other things you'd like people to know about you?
I'm a patriot. So like, this is really important for me. Like, this is a mission for me to teach the world. Hopefully, just like the book is called Fight Less, Win More for a reason. How can we fight less and win more? How can I get more people using these skills to have a better life? So that's important to me. And I would encourage everyone to start doing low stakes practice, because low stakes practice leads to high stakes confidence.
I like it. That's a good place to leave it. Appreciate you coming, man.
Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it.